really want to thank you for joining us for today's exciting discussion about learning to lead with your intuitive intelligence. I'm Terry Short, and this is my colleague Lisa Solis DeLong that you see here with me. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about both of us in just a moment. We're the leaders and facilitators of this Leadership Global Accelerator webinar. Pleased to have you joining us. And as I said, pleased to see so many familiar faces from all over the place. So a little bit about me. I've enjoyed more than 30 years of leadership experience. This would be why I have that gray hair. I hold a Master's of Business Administration with a healthcare focus. And I also have my professional coach certification, my PCC. And through coaching and speaking these days, virtually mostly, but that should change in the near future, I hope. I spend a lot of time as a guest on podcasts and such, and what I'm passionate about doing is helping people realize what their purpose is and having them be able to harness the power of their own inner wisdom. That's a bit about what we're talking about today, and therefore thrive as a leader. So in very practical ways. So that's my sweet spot, and that's what I hope your key takeaways are. So I'm also an author. During 2020 and the COVID lockdown, I published a book. It's called The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. Pleased to be the 2020 American Book Fest finalist and 2021 a Bugbee Falk Award winner for the book. And I've honored to be interviewed by Fast Company and appear on NPR and some fun other ways to get the word out about how words matter. So that's a little bit about me. Let me tell you about my colleague, Lisa. Lisa Solis DeLong is known as the joyful shaman. She builds up the bridge between tragedy and triumph in a surprisingly joyful way. As a plant medicine advocate, a nurse, a certified shamanic practitioner, medium, she believes wholeheartedly that attending to the inner spirit opens us up to our authentic nature and brings us joy both personally and professionally. Lisa's an international speaker and a repeat guest at Rhythmia Life Advancement Center and the Retreat Summit in Costa Rica. She's a TEDx presenter and the author of Blood Brothers, a memoir of faith and loss while raising two sons with cancer. A shaman is defined as someone who sees in the dark. Lisa's seen her way through the darkest times. Her life challenges were much like we're experiencing during this global pandemic. Through decades of her son's cancer treatments, Lisa lived the experience of being quarantined, wearing masks, and fearing being affected by others. With more than 40 years of experience in healthcare and spiritual transformation, Lisa weaves together insights from ancient wisdom and modern thought to inspire audiences with powerful head-to-heart message. Her message, using guided energy medicine, storytelling, writing prompts, dance, and humor. And I've seen that dance. She's phenomenal. Her getting an entire room full of people to dance, 1,000 people when she's on the stage speaking. Her message is filled with firsthand insights on how, even in the midst of a crisis, you can thrive. And that's what we're here to talk about, thriving as a leader. So thank you so much again. Yes. Thank you, Lisa, for bringing all of your wisdom to this group. And we're really pleased to have so many people joining us. And if you're so inclined, let us know where you're calling in from in the chat. And we'll have some other interaction in the chat as we go. I'm going to have a quick sip. We're really happy to welcome you all to this discussion today. It's provided by Leadership Global. And if you want to learn more about this supportive, trusting community designed to help executives like you grow and scale your business, just reach out. Again, Linda Fisk is the leader of it all, and she's an amazing woman with amazing connector abilities. She is connect people and get your business needs met like no one I've ever seen. In Leadership Global, you receive support from influential and highly connected business leaders that can help you develop strategies to pursue your purpose and dramatically increase your success across lots of areas. So we're glad you've joined us for this masterclass today, designed to explore the 6 personas of a thriving leader and learn the key components of attending to your spirit, such as intuition, movement, community, presence, and self-awareness. I want to talk a little bit about some word use. As I said, I've written a book about such, so let me dig a little deeper into there. When I first met Lisa about 7 years ago, she would tell me stories about dreams that she had and how they came to, something in the dream came to be, and how she connected it in her life, and how she gained some wisdom, some inner wisdom in different ways. And I have to tell you, I initially would think to myself, well, that's a bit woo-woo. That's what went through my head. And I had that word kind of stuck. And then as I started to share with people things that I was doing to have a deeper look inward, sometimes they would say that to me. People who know me well, and some of you on the call today would think, oh gosh, she's so businesslike. She's so sort of directive and formal and very, very businesslike. That's what I'm known for. And so when I would say these things, I'd get that look and people would say, oh, that's so woo-woo of you. And so we decided to embrace that. We decided to embrace the term woo-woo, not in a way to minimize the spiritual and intuitive intelligence and that umbrella that it encompasses, but in a way to provide some levity and to bring some lightness to these practices that we know will serve you well. So we're going to talk about specific actions to deepen the intersection between energetic self-care and leadership to create more joy and to help you thrive as a leader. So here we go. Let's see the objectives for today. And we'll bring Lisa back up when we get to her section. So, all right, learning objectives. We have 3 of them. You'll be able to identify the 6 key components of an intuitive leader perspective and determine one or ones, hopefully more than one, that best attend to your spirit. You'll identify the 6 personas of a thriving leader and clarify which one or ones that you do naturally. I'm sure it's more than one. And lastly, determine at least one self-care action that will enhance your ability to lead and to create greater joy. Let's look through this window first. When I think about a window, I think about the infinite possibilities that exist beyond the window. And that's only if I can only see those infinite possibilities if the window's clear. And if it's not, there's something that blocks my vision or my ability to see clearly solutions and a way forward. And so there are ways to make the window more clear, to make that line of sight more clear for yourself. Sometimes words limit or minimize or create the lack of clarity. So part of our job is to help you clean the window and see more clearly outwardly as well as inwardly. The other morning I got up at 5-ish, which is my norm, and I realized that the window in my office when it's dark out it reflects me. So at 5:30 in the morning, it's a mirror and I only see myself, and I think about that visual to remind me how important it is to reflect and to look inward, particularly when there is darkness, when there is something that might be clouding my vision, or if we say darkness might be a challenge, an opportunity, something that needs my attention. First and foremost, it's my job to look inward. And so we'll say that over and over today, because that's the key to gaining that inner wisdom. So let's have a look at this list. 2 lists, actually. The lists are, the list on the left is the one that I'm going to go through, and the list on the right is the one that Lisa's going to go through. And we'll hit on each of these, and we'll take a deeper dive into some of them. When you excel in those key personas, those 6 key personas there of a thriving leader, it's because you're clear about your strengths. So I said earlier that you have an opportunity to identify where you're already quite strong, and then maybe where you have some opportunities to grow even more. We believe that operating on all cylinders in these 6 areas is what leads you to create many, many, many win-win scenarios. So win-win solutions, and win-win being for yourself, for those you lead, for those in your personal life. So we call that sort of the win-win side of things. And I'm going to take a deep dive into each of them. First one, ambassador of the culture. My continual scratchy voice is appearing again. I'll leave you to read them all, and I'm going to highlight a few of them. Great leaders set the tone for the mission, vision, and values. They live the mission and vision values all day, every day. And you see that I suggest that you verb your values. And what that means is that you're, instead of saying honesty is a value, that you say speaking one's truth is a value, perhaps of your company. It's a value of my company. And in doing so, now I've created a behavior that I can watch for, something that I can be on the lookout for, because it's an action. And that's why one would verb your values. So when you are an ambassador of the culture, typically you're a stronger ambassador if your personal values align with the values of your organization. So that's sort of the sweet spot, when there's an alignment between those. So that requires that you look inward and you know what your personal values are and are able to assess the degree to which they align. When there's misalignment, that's typically when you're feeling that it's not the right place for you. So that it's important to keep that front and forward at all times. Being the ambassador of the culture sets you up to do well in all 5 of the other personas. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure how you succeed at the others if you're not doing particularly well at most of these 9 behaviors in the first place. So some of them, let's take a look at 8 and 9. These would be examples of when you would look in the mirror or have a reflection into what you're doing personally before you address anything that you're seeing outwardly. So you can be the greatest ambassador of the culture, and that could be a real strength. Where it gets a little tricky is how you lead others and how you influence and inspire others to be ambassadors of the culture. So an example would be 8 and 9, when you're hearing the use of we, they indicators, people saying, well, they said, or, we have to, and there's some delineation, or even undermining words that are allowed in an organization. So the reason I say look inward is because it could be tied to your own communication, what it is that you're saying routinely, words that you're choosing that cause this lack of ownership and that cause others to not be ambassadors of the culture. So that's your job to uphold. So that's our first example of looking inward. Leader as coach. Great leaders actively coach, and they do so in order to tease out the potential of each individual contributor. Some individuals are born strong as coaches, and some leaders, it takes them a long time to occur to them that they're also a coach. And there are a lot of behaviors, that's 12 on that list, that are associated with being a great coach. Those that aren't sort of born into this coaching space can develop it by consistently developing the confidence and the caring that's required to be a great coach. And as I mentioned, you're on solid footing if you're already a great ambassador of the culture, because you indeed are able then to lean on your sense of mission, vision, and values in order to coach those that report to you. So let's have an example of that. Numbers 5 and 12 are ones that pop in, and they're actually ones that I find myself coaching my clients about a lot. And so whether you're managing performance issues and setting expectations or navigating alleged difficult conversations, stepping back and first leaning into your own values, leaning into your own position as ambassador of the culture is what puts you on that solid footing. But then also looking at any limiting beliefs. You're holding up that mirror. What limiting beliefs, what mental model might be preventing you from moving forward in more of an inspirational coaching manner to those that you're speaking to? Makes me think of why I put the word alleged there. So alleged difficult conversations, I say that because it's not until you look inward that you decide why you think it's difficult in the first place. Like, what is it you're carrying to the relationship that might cause it to be difficult? And how could your approach be different? What is it? What inner wisdom will serve you in approaching the conversation in a way with clarity and with some real intention for desired outcomes? So all the things that Lisa ends up sharing with you at the end, you'll be able to circle back and see how utilizing some of these practices allows you to go further into that inner wisdom and create a win-win interaction, let's say in the conversation or even in performance issues. So all of those can be win-wins, and they hinge on how you're reflecting and how you're showing up as the leader in the first place. Continual change agent or chaotic expert. So the best leaders out there, particularly in this day and age, embrace change as a constant. They actually normalize change. I see some folks that have joined the call that have been in my past life and in healthcare. And I tell you what, if you're in healthcare, you know that continual change is the name of the game. So becoming that continual change agent or chaotic expert is key. It's one of the personas that's key, that's required, particularly in healthcare, but in all business. Chaotic means the ability to bring order to the chaos. And some people, again, naturally are able to do that. They're good problem solvers, goal setters, and such. But all of these behaviors can be learned. How are they learned? They're learned by having the confidence and the centering to dig deeper into each one. And that requires that sometimes you change your perspective. So for example, number 7, maintaining a growth mindset. How do you strengthen that? You strengthen that by looking at situations as opportunities and always peeling back the layers of what exists or what transpired in order to get at the root cause. In healthcare, we do root cause analysis, and we end up with lots of information to distill and to figure out how to do things differently. Like, what is the learning? And build in a growth mindset where the learning is always a good thing. It's a key part of resilience as well, to be able to identify this thing that is happening that is seemingly out of my control. What pieces do I control? And from that look at what I can control, I think about any positives, any learning, and therefore how I might adjust my perspective and how I respond. Life integrator. This one's a challenge, well, at least for me anyway. Great leaders integrate all aspects of their true self, personal and spiritual connections. Ends up, our Gen Zers lead the charge here. And we can look to an entire generation to honor, and that's what we should be doing in the workplace, to honor how respectful they are of integrating the components of their life. I sometimes think that when I did this list, should have moved number 6 up to number 1, because I believe it all starts there. Like, what is your personal podcast? What is that internal narrative that's playing 24/7, right? And sometimes, particularly for myself last night, at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it ends up that on that personal podcast, you get to decide. You're the director, producer, narrator, host. You get to decide who comes on, and you get to decide how that narration goes, how that story plays out. You get to choose the words. You get to choose where you put your energy. When you look at this list, you get to choose, and it might take some tweaking and some rearranging of priorities, but you get to choose where your energy will be spent. Think about this list as the pieces of a pie. You get to choose the size of each pie. And that this is something that should be periodically reflected upon. You know, what is it? When you pause long enough to see what's out of balance, then you're able to choose how to put it back in balance. And see, notice that I said you get to choose. You don't have to choose. And you can feel that somebody else is choosing for you, or your work is choosing for you. But it ends up, you actually get to choose. And that is relevant to doing the work and adopting some of the practices that Lisa will bring into the conversation. All right, next one. Emotionally and intuitively intelligent. Great leaders harness the power of their emotional and intuitive intelligence. There are 12 behaviors here, but there are probably more. This slide relates most directly to the practices and the work that Lisa's going to share. It's a little bit of overlap there. And that's a good thing. So all of them, and we contend that all of the things on the list that Lisa's sharing relate to or can be used in order to build up your abilities as a thriving leader, can relate to, cross over to all of these 6 personas. So it ends up typically, we think of women as being more emotionally and intuitively intelligent, but I think that's changing. I can feel that's changing. Organizations are creating meditation pods and talking about mindfulness, and you know they're creating spaces for this self-awareness. And as that happens, everybody's brought into the fold. It feels like globally we're all operating on a different level, particularly in this area. So I want to drill down on one of them, and that is number 9. So practicing the pause. Practicing the pause, well, first of all, it could serve number 1. So when you practice the pause because someone has just triggered you, they've said something that, you know, you're hard pressed to maintain your emotional regulation. When you practice the pause, that's when you stop long enough to think, and it's a reflection again, what is it? What is it that is causing me to have this reaction? Because maybe it's more about you than it is about them. So practice the pause can happen in various and sundry ways. So it could be before I'm about to say a word. It could be in a nanosecond that is what I'm about to say aligned with my intention and what information I intend to share or the message I intend to convey. It could be, before I walk into a presentation I'm giving. It could be while I'm sitting at the board table and very important discussions going on and I want to share something. I'm going to practice the pause momentarily to ensure that what I'm going to say is attached, is connected very tightly to what I would like to convey. Practicing the pause too could be meditation. It could be a more intentional, longer version of practicing the pause. That's a space in which you completely clear your mind, and that when you think about the window that I showed, that you're providing that clarity because you're removing all the noise, you're removing anything that might blur or cause a filter, and therefore prevent you from seeing clearly how to proceed or what path is to be taken. So this level, when we talk about this persona, this level of intelligence creates limitless potential for you and for those around you as well, once done well. All right, proactive and productive juggler. Great leaders plan well and accomplish much. Now, my procrastinator friends get a little itchy when they look at this list, not maybe a little bit more of a challenge. And even those who live every day, day in and day out, intentionally or not, maybe you don't know a better way, in a reactive space. A lot of people live every day in a reactive space. It doesn't have to be that way. It requires paying attention to each of these 8 behaviors and building them up, practicing them, and at all times looking inward to see how you're blocking your own self. So I might ask myself, do I manage myself well? Do I manage my own priorities well, personally, before I even think about professionally? Do I own my calendar, or does my calendar own me? So when I start to look more closely, then I get to the point of, let's say, drilling down on one of these, maybe number 4, and differentiating of all the things I have in the air, which of the balls could I say are glass and which are rubber? How can I have a little leadway there? And after doing that, then I decide how to reprioritize into daily, weekly, and monthly actions. I'm also a big fan of managing my calendar instead of it managing me. So number 1 and number 2 come in or figure prominently in my life. But it's an effort. It is. I don't have a wand to wave, and there's no magic here. It's a really concentrated effort to choose to be proactive over allowing the reactiveness. Once you get that down, and once that you're being more mindful, and that is your practice to be proactive, the reactiveness falls away. You'll wake up one day and say, gosh, I'm hardly ever reactive anymore. And that's because you've put in place the proactive practices that'll now serve you well. As a matter of fact, they'll serve everybody around you well. That's how it works. And it ends up that that's where the joy is. The joy, more joy, is in being proactive, personally and with those that you lead. All right, so we've talked about some choices here related to being a proactive leader. These are the 6 personas that, when practiced collectively, lead you to be a thriving leader, lead you to more joy. So I'm going to set Lisa up now, and she's going to provide even more clarity when you think about some of those challenges that I just identified. And I said earlier that, our goal is that we create win-wins in each of these areas all day, every day, for ourselves and for those that we serve. And so now let's have Lisa talk us through how we gain that insight and how we leverage our spiritual and intuitive intelligence to move deeper into owning these personas.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So it is my great honor to be with you at this time from all over the world. I saw people from, Europe and New Zealand and here in the United States, all over the country. So I feel very honored that you said yes to this invitation. And also, I just want to point out too that Terry has been my coach. And as I watch her share what she's sharing, she really walks her talk, and I am that woo-woo person. I'm right out front with that. And so when I hear her talking about those leadership skills, I see how she has coached me into those leadership skills over the last few years, and how thankful I am for that, because all of us need each other in this walk, right? So with that said, and in a heart of gratitude, I am going to talk about the 6 key components of spiritual balance that support your intuitive intelligence, and what we call woo-woo. And also, when Terry mentioned that, she used to think I was woo-woo, now so she brought me the good leadership coaching, and I brought her the woo-woo. So this presentation is a manifestation of our relationship, and that's a beautiful thing. It's very powerful. So as I go through the list, I invite you to take notes, pay attention to the things and suggestions that pop out to you. Some of these practices you're already familiar with, and write in the chat, please, what do you like to do? Do I bring up something that you're like, oh no, that's way too woo-woo? And keep in mind what those things are, and we'll come back to that in the end. So here we go. The number one aspect of being a spiritual person, of being aware, is self-awareness. Everything starts with self-awareness. And what that means is that you have a recognition that you are seeing through your own eyeballs. You have a perspective that is uniquely yours, that you look out in the world, you bring it back through your mind, and you make sense of it from your perspective, from your experience. And self-awareness is where you understand this, other people are doing that too. Not everyone thinks the way you do, so you have totally different values and views. Sometimes we align with people with similar values and views, but especially in the workplace, sometimes we're working with people who have absolute opposites. When you come to that place of self-awareness, you can then reflect, and as you can see on the reflection again is number one. And I love Terry's analogy of the window, because whenever we bump up against somebody who is opposite of us, we have to take a moment of reflection. Well, we don't have to, we get to, if we're in this practice, and see what is this person teaching me? What am I learning about myself that is either that I've crossed paths with this person? Because I think that every intersection is meaningful and on a spiritual level. And so it's an opportunity to look at that relationship or situation from a place of, this person's different than me. I don't have to judge them. I don't have to make a decision about them. I can simply reflect on what is it about me that thinks what I think. And that's a super helpful tool as we lead others. And the other one I want to point out on this list is, journaling and gratitude are pretty obvious, but astrological connections. I put it here because I'm very new to astrology. It's never been something that I've been very interested in. And I had a astrology chart reading this week that absolutely opened me up to seeing myself from a new perspective and a new self-awareness about how I fit in the cosmos. And that may sound very woo-woo to you. Raise your hand if that's like way too woo-woo. But at the same time, I used to think that way. And when I experienced it at this point in my life, I turned 60 this year, and it landed for me. It brought me such insight and comfort. And so stay open to these options that come your way in your life. And then moving on to number 2, community. I have a longer list on this one, and some of these seem obvious: praying with others and being in service. Our community is basically the people who give you that sense of belonging, that they have your back, like you're all on the same page with things. They support you. They help you connect with others and reconnect with ourselves. And community, we are wired for community. We are human beings. We are really not designed to live alone. And so many people are suffering right now in not being able to get to their communities. But there are things we can do. Prayer is one. And I'm not going to focus on that one right now, but prayer is so common among most people that there's such a huge variety of ways to pray. And I'd rather focus on retreats. Retreats are my happy place. I love sitting with people when we have more time. I discovered in my astrology chart that I'm wired for one-to-one conversations, meaningful conversations. And I love retreats for that reason, because we like when Terry and I host a retreat, we can go through these lists, and then we have time. We can go to each person and say in circle, what was your reaction? What was your response? What comes up for you? And then we have 2 or 3 days to walk with you. So retreats are, and also it's your community. Your community shows up at retreats. And if you feel like you don't have community, come to one of ours and you will find your community. And I just love how that works when we're attracted to things. And then the circles are the other thing that are my favorite. I found out recently that the nurses, since I come from a healthcare background, the nurses at Children's Hospital Los Angeles have hosted drum circles on the rooftop of the hospital. Can you imagine a group? These are oncology nurses that I know, and they have been up there on the rooftop in downtown Los Angeles, on the fringes of Hollywood, up there drumming together. Can you imagine how powerful that is to create community? That was the coolest thing I had ever heard. So we can get creative about how we create community as leaders, especially with our teams. And all right, let's go on to movement. And movement seems obvious. We move, our bodies are designed to move, and energy flows through our bodies so we can move. And yoga is mainstream now. When I was a kid, there was no yoga. I watched it evolve over the years, and I'm so grateful. I am not a yoga expert. I know 3 moves. I do them in the morning and at night, and it helps me. It makes me feel connected to my body. And so you don't have to be an expert at any of these. If you have one yoga move, maybe it's to stand up straight and stretch your arms up and take a breath. And you can use those at work. You can use them in the car. You can use them on a walk in the park. So the idea is to integrate movement into your life so that it becomes easy and makes your life flow with more grace and ease. My sweet spot in movement is dancing. As Terry mentioned in my bio, I am a partner dancer. I love ballroom dancing. I love hustle dancing. I love swing dancing. And when I'm with my community, dance also overlaps with community. When you find the thing you love, you'll often find the people who love it too, and they become part of your community. And I have a wonderful dance community. When I'm feeling down or lonely, I can text any of them and say, hey, you want to meet at a restaurant and dance, go dancing? there's this beautiful network of people. And so I live by that. And I highly recommend dancing. If you don't partner dance, turn on your favorite song and dance wildly alone. So many of us feel afraid and shy about dancing in front of other people, but you can dance by yourself without any judgment. Move your body, let it go in a way that feels good to it, and really enjoy what that does for your spirit and for that uplift. Lots of science behind movement, and I'm sure most of you know about chemicals that are released in our body when we're happy and moving, and dance is a great way to do that. And another thing that I do, walking in nature, I go outside and walk at least 3 times a day. Not everyone has the opportunity to do that. So especially when I had speaking engagements at hospitals, I very often would walk around the hospital campus and just touch the bushes. I would touch the trees. I would just put my hands on the plants, and I probably looked a little nutty, but it helped me. It helped my body relax. I felt tonic chemicals going through my body, and it made me a much better presenter. And it's an easy way to connect with nature to do that. And forest baths, if you've never heard of a forest bath, I believe the first time I heard about it was as a prescribed therapy coming out of Japan, where you literally walk through a forest and take in all the scent and using your 5 senses. What am I smelling? What am I feeling? What am I hearing? And it's interesting that as a plant medicine advocate, I know about terpenes, the chemical profiles in plants, and in pine is pinene, and that is one that is very pleasing and uplifting to our spirit. So nature is good for us, right? It's kind of a given. And so let's get into nature more. Number 4, presence. This goes back to self-awareness and practicing the pause. By knowing where you are, taking a moment. There are many books on presence. Practicing present moment awareness is probably the most mainstream now, where you stop and take a note of where are you? What is your attitude right now? It can help you to feel more equanimity with where you are and what you're doing and who you're serving. And you can do that, and all of these on the list will help you with that. What I'm going to focus on right now is the one I think that is causing so much absence of presence, and that's media. Being on social media, being on television, watching TV, watching screens. And the most important thing we can do in a work day and in a busy life that we have is to take a media fast. If you have 10 minutes of turning it off and stop that automatic reaction to what's on my phone and having it in your hand. And because I really see in people around me that it's an addiction. It's an absolute addiction. Like, oh, I have a minute, I have to look at my phone. Or I'm going to the bathroom, I have to look at my phone. Or I'm getting in my car, I have to look at my phone. I'll make my phone calls while I'm driving, which I personally cannot do. I don't do it well. So taking that media fast and replacing that with a moment of breath work, taking some deep breaths. It doesn't have to be very involved, just to feel what the breath feels like going through your body, to have an awareness that you even have a body that's being breathed. That is the kind of thing that comes with presence and can really alter the way the rest of how your day goes. It's an amazing, amazing tool. And the other thing I want to go back to is visualization and the metaphor that Terry used about the window. I find it's interesting in 2 ways, because that metaphor came to Terry this week. She had a moment of her own quiet and presence and reflection that led to her. She literally was looking at her window early in the morning, as she said. And that came to her at exactly the right time as she was preparing this presentation. And to me, that also involves synchronicity. So I believe that we have a team that works with us each. I call mine my spirit team. You can call them whatever you want, or call it that you have this feeling like you're supported. There's lots of names for these things, but for me, it's my spirit team. And I really believe that when Terry needed that message, they whispered in her voice, her own team, that this is a great metaphor, Terry, use it. And I see it in this playful kind of way. And I also like that we can, in the visualization part, look through to what you have done well. What have you done well? And always looking toward that to move you into the next thing. And then intuition. Intuition is, many people think it's a gift. It is actually a survival mechanism. It's wired into all of us. There's no one who walks the planet who doesn't have intuition. It is a innate knowing of what's going on around you. Like you walk into a meeting and you can feel the room. That's your intuition kicking in. And recognizing synchronistic events, like I just did in that example of what Terry experienced with the window metaphor. And body signals, the chills, when you know, how many of you have had a conversation with someone and they've mentioned something really meaningful and all of a sudden you feel chills and you go, "Ooh, I've got goosies," or that is in us. That's energy moving through our body to make us feel, to pay attention or be aware. Wow, this is an important conversation, or I really want to let this message land. The other thing is dreams. I'm a devoted dreamer. I love doing dream work. I keep a dream journal, and I highly recommend everyone keep a dream journal. Our dreams are showing us images that have messages, and they're showing us symbols. And if you take the time to invite them before bed, you know, you can say, "Please let me have a dream that I'll remember and help me to remember it," and then write it down. And when you, in the writing of it is when you see what it's about and things pop up for you. And it's a great practice. Also, oracle cards. I used to be terrified of oracle cards. I was like, they were weird. I don't want anything to do with them, until I started using ones that were from nature. I like animal spirit cards, and especially birds. And so it's very common for me, if I need a little extra guidance, I will look at my cards, and typically it's a very helpful way to kind of get out of my head and get back into my connection with spirit. And lastly, energetic hygiene. This is, if you've never heard of energetic hygiene, think of it as brushing your teeth. So in the morning you get up and you brush the gunk off your teeth, and then at night you brush your teeth before you go to bed to rest. And we, like our teeth, we accumulate gunk. We accumulate energetic gunk throughout the day, depending on where we've been, what we've done. If you've ever been in a meeting with someone and you're like, "Oh, they were heavy," you know, some of that heavy has landed on you. And so it's a good practice to have on hand ways to practice energetic hygiene in a minute, and also for the long soaking bath that you want, you know, like a sound bath where you can listen quietly to when someone's using singing bowls. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced a sound bath, and how did it feel? Did it change your mood? Did it change your energy? It's a wonderful practice. And then one simple energy move that I like is a qigong move, where you put your hand in a V at the top of your head, and you swoosh down really fast with your arms, and exhale, you go whoosh. And you do that 3 times, whoosh, and then another time, whoosh. And I like to also shake out my hands and just send all that energy to the earth. And I can do that. I just did it in less than a minute. And so those are the things you can incorporate throughout your day, and make sure that you're attending to your energy and your needs as well. And so these are the 6 practices that I had just a quick time to mention, and for your spiritual uplift. Whew. So Terry, what are your reflections on woo-woo?
Unmute myself. There we go. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. As you were saying that, I was thinking about another experience that I had recently. While everybody's thinking about how they might relate to what Lisa shared, I will share mine. So I was given some animal cards, and a couple of weeks ago, actually, I had a pending conversation. I was choosing to speak to a loved one about something that I sensed was going to be a little bit sticky. And And my approach is typically rather direct. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to set the intention that I would like to be successful in this conversation. I'm going to pull an animal card, and I pulled the fox. Ends up, the fox advises subtlety. And that just sort of like hit me like this, you know, so it literally said, brutal honesty is not the best approach. I thought, all right, well, there's a message for me. And so I changed my approach and, you know, had a much more successful conversation because of it. But anyway, that's what came to mind while you were talking. So let's see what others might relate to and commit to.
Right. So what I'd like to invite our audience right now is to choose one intuitively intelligent behavior that you will commit to doing in 2022. And that behavior will attend to your spirit. This is a way for you to enhance your self-care. And write it down in the chat if you feel so moved to do so. And also write it down on your calendar. This is where Terry and I overlap. She got me to use my calendar, and it's a wonderful thing. It really is very freeing. So, what do you think? What's coming up for you? Take a look at the chat. Wow, there's lots of responses.
Have regular practice of yoga, self-awareness through journaling and gratitude. That's really powerful, you know, to think every day about what you're grateful for, and then so much comes out from that place. More meditation.
Yeah, and Deanna says that she has the joy is in being proactive, and I totally agree. Hi, Deanna. Yeah, being proactive is, and you know, it's funny because like as coming from the more woo-woo side, I never really thought of myself being proactive. I thought about myself being attracted to certain things. So follow that attraction, follow your curiosity. If there's something that you were like, wow, this is coming up again for me today, I think I better take the leap and commit to it, you know?
All right, so we've got some good practices in here. Oh, nice, Jenna, nice long one here. Journaling. It moves so fast sometimes I can't see it. Jennifer says, pulling her astrological chart. You know, here's the deal. All of these things provide insight. And that's the whole point, to gain some insight and to connect with your inner wisdom. That's what this is all about. And our intention is to help you see how you can do that to serve as a better leader, to thrive as a leader and serve those that you lead, right? So it's about taking the time and committing to doing some things differently in order to have that be a different result, right? In order to excel.
And I see like Sarah is sharing that she wants to go back to a regular yoga practice. And isn't that the truth? Like we get started doing something and then it fades for a while, and that's okay. It's totally fine. When you get that nudge to go, oh, I want to get back to that, because you already know how good it feels. That makes it that much easier to step into it. So good for you, Sarah. Do it.
Thank you all for your commitment. So let's talk about how we can serve you. First, we are going to offer you the complimentary assessment that results in your unique balance wheel. So there's one for spiritual intuitive components and one for the 6 personas. And Chelsea's going to put the links in the chat, but I think that Linda Fisk will also send them as a follow-up. And I'll show you, this is what it's going to look like. Whoops, going the wrong way. We're going backwards. The woo-woo balance wheel. So you answer questions related to those 6 components, and you end up with a what we won't say whose this is. It might just be a mock one, but you can see how the goal is more towards the outer ranges, and you can see where the first one is number 1, self-awareness. The second one is community. So there might be an opportunity here for increased community, if one so chooses. And then this is the win-win balance wheel, also showing the 6 behaviors of personas, and then how one would measure up, let's say. And then that's where you can decide where you want to put your energy. So another way that we would love to serve you is we are having 4 retreats in 2022. Yes, so the first is in March and the second in May, and they're both 2.5 days. They're at the Mount Madonna and Center. And the third one is in Estes Park at the Dow House, and that's 3.5 days. And the fourth one is 5 nights in Costa Rica. So you can learn lots more about that at the Thriving Leader Collaborative, and just dig in, have a look, and email us, ask us questions. As Lisa said, we feel very strongly that, this is like a crash course. It's just like really lots of information. And you saw that on each slide, we picked and chose, sort of 1 or 2 things to drill down on. We want to really go there. We want to really go to a place of transformation, right? So leadership will transform in this decade. It will, with the Great Resignation and all that's going on, and work from home and hybrid and so on and so forth. How one leads will be required to transform. So we'd like to give you a leg up and help you transform as a leader. So please consider if that would be a fit for you. We contend that that combination, which I said earlier, the energy that you put into those spiritual and intuitively intelligent practices, which is the woo-woo, and then the 6 personas of a thriving leader, we contend that the greater the overlap, the more joy. So let's open it up.